Welcome to the Living Room Vibe podcast. I'm your host, Danny Lourdes, creating a space where real people have raw conversations. Make yourself at home and let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with part 2 of Tina's episode talking about being the child of a grieving parent. So let's get into it.
So let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough, more so than the loss of a sibling, um, which is what it's like to be the child of a grieving parent.
Mm,
It's like being in a house where the foundation is subtly unstable. The
mhm,
person who is the rock is now experiencing their own earthquake. And you're like, okay,
mhm.
what's going on? How did your relationship with your parents change after your brother passed?
Mm. Yeah, that's probably the hardest part. Um, I I wonder if you can relate to this. I feel like I can pass by someone on the street, and especially for if it's a mother, there's a
Mhm.
look in their eyes that they all have. Like I can pinpoint it from a mile away. There's a look in a woman's eyes that has lost a child that they all
Mm.
share. Um, I just I feel like because 'cause I've lived with it for so long, like,
Yeah,
I
you
can
can see
recognize
it.
it. You could see it, it's like there's a joy there, but, like, a small light has been turned off in the back that can't ever been
Mm.
turned back on. Um, and that's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's a and I think, again, things change as you become an adult and you have your own children, you can understand and relate a lot more than you could at that time. So I think I give my mother a lot more grace now as an adult than I did at
Yeah.
that time. But to back it up some, my parents divorced when I was like 12. And like I had mentioned before, my father and I were estranged probably for the last, I don't know, 15 years. We really didn't have a lot of connection.
Yeah.
Almost primarily after my parents divorced. So we weren't actually very close for um, a while after that. That's a whole separate thing. So I actually hadn't even seen my father for a while before my brother passed. So the first time I saw him in, I don't know, a year or two was like a few days after my brother passed. He came to our house. And I remember it being such an odd thing because I was like, I haven't seen you. And now the first time I'm seeing you is because your son is dead.
Right.
Of just being like, this is not how I thought I would be seeing you again, but also feeling kind of that compassion and loss for him of being like, "Oof, I wonder how you're feeling. You haven't
Hmm.
been in our lives, but was still your child," you know? And so there was a lot of complicated feelings with that because I think I was upset with him of being like, almost, "You don't deserve to be sad. You haven't been here,"
Right. Hmm.
kind of thing. Like, "You haven't been here. Why are you sad?"
Right.
But now as an adult being like, "It doesn't matter, that was his child," you
Yep.
know? There's gonna be some kind of emotion there. I mean, maybe not for everyone, but in his situation, I knew that there was some. Even if a lot of the emotion was just regret, like we were
Yeah.
saying, or, um, shame, or I don't know. I will never actually know because was never able to have those conversations with him, but I know it changed him because there's no way it couldn't have.
Yeah.
But yes, when it comes to my mom, uh I think especially because saying my parents were divorced, so she was a single mother of 3 kids, 2 being boys, so the amount of anxiety and stress she was under in general, having 2 black sons out in the world as a single mom, um, and then losing one of them, her world collapsed. She was just for those first couple of months, basically just a shell of herself, can't
Yeah.
leave the house, can't get out of bed. And again, it's time uh, changes so much your perspective of things. I think we all just dealt with our grief in private, separate ways,
Mm.
which would be so different now because of the amazing understanding of therapy
Ooh, come
and
on, therapy.
yeah, being open and talking about things. So there's a lot. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit too, but just of how differently things could be dealt with if mental health in general was approached differently in the Black community. And
Mhm.
my parents are immigrants. I'm first generation American. My parents are from Jamaica. So there's so much compounded on like how you dealt with things and
Right.
how you allowed people into your life to deal with things. So I didn't really feel like there was a lot of room to talk to each other
Mhm.
about things, or like it was like now there was this expectation to like be really emotionally vulnerable with each other, but we hadn't ever been before. So
Mhm.
it was kind of like, this is weird. Not we weren't very cold to we weren't cold to each other. We were like we loved each other. We laughed a lot. We did vacations. We were a great family, but I think those deep emotional connections weren't there as much. Because I remember after, I know this is going off a little bit of a tangent, but I remember after we started saying I love you so much more intentionally, not
Yeah.
just a love you, but more of like a
You
I
know,
love you. And I remember it
mhm.
feeling weird at first because I
Mhm.
was like,
It
ooh,
had
like
depth to it. It's weird because
yes.
I've experienced this because, sometimes I love you can be like, "Bless you," when someone sneezes, like, you just automatically say it, right?
Yes.
But you're not really thinking about it, but afterwards, it was like, "I love you," and I was like, "Oh my god, that's so happy I felt that." Like,
That
I
is so
know,
funny.
thank you.
I didn't know. That's so interesting to know you had that same experience because and it still
Mhm,
feels that way to this day. It's with
mhm.
intention. I'm not ever
Yeah.
just like, "Okay, love you."
Yeah,
It's with
love you
intention, and
back.
I think it's because we've learned that sometimes that love you is the last love you.
Yeah,
So it's like every time I say it, I'm like, I'm saying it for real. Like,
right.
"I love you." No, no, really, I love you.
Right. Do you understand
But do you understand? So it is a little heavier.
it? It
But
is.
so that was a good chase. Like my brother and I now very like all the time, like, okay, I love you, which that wasn't a normal thing. But going back, I think being 16 and seeing your parent um, experience grief in an all-encompassing way. That's a great description you used of the house and earthquake. Of it literally was like an earthquake that came through and
Mhm.
destroyed everything, or a tornado, or whatever natural disaster you want
Right.
to use that doesn't just like damage a few things, but like flattens everything in its wake. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I understood that to some degree at that age, but there was always also that little bit of, but we're still here, you
Mhm.
know, we're still here. Like I, I I'm scared because you're so deep in your grief
Mhm.
and I'm still a kid. So I'm like, I need you to not be that deep because now I'm afraid. um,
Ooh, girl, you talking about it
right?
now.
Like, yeah. So
It's
there was
interesting
that.
because
Um,
we have it's so funny how not funny, but it's crazy how similar our
no, I
feelings
understand.
are at different ages. Like this
Yeah.
is you meeting your mom at 16 compared to me being 40 meeting my mom. And
Oh yeah.
like it's crazy because I had those same thoughts. Like my mom, it's when I think about the house, you know, my mom was a shell of herself. Like it was like that earthquake
Mhm.
came, it blew everything, our windows, so everything inside was still damaged. Our foundation was cracked, but the shell of the house was still standing of my mom.
Yeah.
And so, but she just was not the same. And
Yeah.
I remember having this overwhelming need to want to take care of her and make sure that she's okay because I saw how okay she was not. And
Yeah.
my mom is very strong. She's strong in her faith. She's just a strong woman in general. And I mean,
Mhm.
one day I'll have her on here. She can share her story whenever she's ready, about just the type of
Miss
life and
Sheila, she's a
upbringing.
great woman.
Yes, the things that she's experienced in her life. And so I'm
Mhm.
just like, to see her like that was like, oh my gosh. But then grief obviously doesn't have a timeline, but I think the
Mm-mm.
first part of it was me focused so much on my mom that I wasn't taking care of myself. Um,
Mhm.
I wasn't feeling my own grief. And so, but at the
Mhm.
time where my grief like slapped me in my face, was like, "Now you gonna deal with me right now." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
I needed my mom. And so, but she was
exactly.
still in her own. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Hello, I'm still here." Like,
Mhm.
I'm one of five. And so I'm like, but I had that same thought of, I need you for me. Like, I need you. I need my
Exactly.
mom. I need you to, I wanted her to step out of her own grief for a moment just to see me. I felt very
Yeah.
invisible.
That's a
Um,
great way to describe it of, like, wanting them to step out of it. I think I remember having that feeling, not of, like, "I need you to let go of all of it," but it's just like,
right.
check in."
Yes. Hmm.
Like, just
Uh,
come out for a
yeah.
second and be like, "Are you okay?"
Right.
And that but again, it's just so interesting, the idea of grace, of how much more I look at things differently now as a mother,
Hmm.
because like, that's not even a thought I can entertain
Right.
of what would that be like. I'm like, my life would be over.
Right.
So so then I can relate to that. I'm like, of course that's why she felt that way, because that's how I would feel right now if that like
Hmm.
literally I don't like that it is unnatural. I mean, people say it all the time. You've heard it, I'm sure, 1,000 times now that you guys have experienced. Like, kids aren't supposed to die before their parents.
Right.
But being a parent, it's like, no, really, they're not
Right.
supposed to. Like, that's not allowed to happen.
And I think I
So,
feel it a little bit more now that, both of our girls are about to graduate and
yeah,
possibly go off to college and be just, thrown into this world at this crazy
yeah,
time that we're in. I'm feeling it a lot more. Like, now I feel like that feeling's a little more uh bigger, I guess, taking up more space in my body, because I'm like, she is about to be out here in this world where more things and possibilities of
yeah.
more things can happen. Um,
Mhm.
so I feel like it's just relating to my mom on that, in that way of, you
Absolutely.
know, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm about to be in that same boat of having a child in this world that is not in my home where I can control and
Yeah.
protect. And, but yeah, I remember
And you know
feeling
what the
like,
worst is? My mom
what?
has told me, she's like, "You know that never ends, right?" She's like, "'Cause then your kids just have kids, and then you worry about your kids." Like, she told me that not that
Yes.
long ago. She's like, "Well, now I just worry about your kids." I'm like, "What? This never
I
stops?"
just talked to my mom about this last week. She told me
Yeah.
the same thing about Savannah, how she feels about Savannah going off to college.
I
And
was
I'm
like, "Wait,
like,
what? No, no, no. We
mhm,
can't say that this is never gonna end." I'm like, "Why are you
right.
worrying about my kids that same way?" She's like, "Of course." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
man, there's never a break."
Uh-uh,
Never you
no,
mean
because
this
we're
is just
gonna
gonna
feel
be
the same way
forever.
when our kids have kids. When
I
our kids have
know.
kids, we're gonna be like, oh wait, wait, my grandbaby. Oh my God. Like,
Exactly. I was like, "So this burden forever."
forever. Your this,
Forever.
what's that saying? Having kids is like having your heart outside your,
Your heart,
outside
yeah.
your body. You just
Yeah.
having it around on a tray, just walking around for
Yeah.
anybody, all elements of the world to just do whatever they will with.
But what a privilege to love something that much, to have that
Yeah.
much love in to where there's fear with it. Um,
Mm.
it's it's such an amazing thing to know that that kind of love exists. Like I know there's a quote that I just saw recently talking about things just still popping up. There'll be little quotes, things are here or there that I'm like, oof, I relate to that so much.
Hmm.
But there's this writer, I don't even really know that much about them. I started to do a little bit of looking into them, but I guess they write a lot about grief and faith. So hopefully they're not some like closeted horrific person. But there's a little snippet of a poem or just like a little uh, thought that they wrote about of where it says, "As long as there's grief, I will endure it because it means that you were here and that it mattered." And that reminds
Mm.
me of that hold the your heart walking around outside of you of just, um, and like I was saying, just the privilege to have loved that much. Because there's a part of me now that's like, I'm grateful that I still have that grief in some ways, or those moments that to go along with the weather analogy, like
Mhm.
thunderstorms and stuff. It's like that pop I was talking about, it's like a clap of thunder, um, or a bolt of lightning out of the sky,
Mhm.
kind of unexpected, that kind of like startles you, scares you a little
Yeah.
bit. But in some ways, at this point in my life, I'm really grateful for it because it reminds me that what a privilege I was to have that love
Mm.
in my life, and to have loved someone that much that it hurts
Yeah.
to not have them around. Because that, I mean, there's millions, billions of people in this world. I don't love all of them. I don't even
Right.
like most of them.
That part.
So that's not a feeling I get about everyone. So there's some uh, privilege in the ability to, even with this grief, knowing it's being born out of so much love. There's also that saying, of, grief is just love with nowhere to go, kind of thing. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily feel like it's with love nowhere to go because I think we could put that love out around us. Um, I'm very much a like earth, nature,
Mhm.
universe based person in my life. And I feel like that's the love I throw out into the universe, into my kids, out into the trees and the wind and everything around me. Because that's kind of how I view what happens in this life. That brings me a lot of peace to feel like we're never truly lost because, or haven't truly lost someone because they're with us, even on a cellular level. Just even
Yeah.
going back to like how my mom processed those things, obviously not very well. Understandably, as an adult, I understand that now. I wish she was a little bit more there for me. What I wish I would have known at that time, even just on a scientific level, sometimes when things are in black and white, it helps me a lot more to like compartmentalize how I deal with things.
Mhm.
But how uh, there, after a person has physically carried a child, that you still carry some of their cells in your
Yeah.
body.
I was just talking to Savannah
Um,
about this.
So
That's so
I even
funny.
express it to my kids now, or I even think about that now. Like, say, for example, after my father passed, even though we were estranged and all that, there's a small part of me that takes comfort in knowing that not only are, people say it kind of flippantly, like, they're still with you. I'm like, no, but literally,
Yeah.
like, your DNA is my DNA.
Yep.
Like, I literally always carry a piece of you. And I think when I started kind of holding that as my just spiritual worldview, world belief system, it brought me so much more peace to even just think about it on a cellular level. And I've
Mhm.
told my kids, I'm like, when I'm gone, you still literally have me with you. Just that idea of we carry each other in our bodies. Um, so just as much of as grief has a place in us, like they still do in a lot of ways live still in us. And I know that can sound very like woo woo or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like, no, that's actually scientific. Like you can't
It's
dispute
true.
that.
I was just
I'm like,
talking to
that's
Savannah
very
about
cool.
it because I was like, when I'm gone, like you carry me and you literally, and also when you have your kids, they will carry me with them as
Yeah,
well. And when they have their kids, it's gonna go all the way down. We ain't never going
I
nowhere,
know.
you
Isn't that
know? So
beautiful?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's very comforting to think about that. But I did want to say one last thing, just going back to how my mother dealt with it. Of even though I can understand it now as a parent,
Hmm.
just saying, if anyone at some point is listening to this and you are the parent of, you've lost the child and you have other children, how important it is to, if you aren't able to do it, to make sure you find people who can
Oh
for your
girl,
child.
yes.
Like, I think now as a parent, I could understand, like, yes, could she have come out of her grief and seen that? Sure. One, can't go back and change that. Two, I am not in that situation.
Right.
I don't know how I would have dealt with that, and I don't hold that against her. Could things have been done differently? Yes, but I feel like all things told, we weren't abandoned. She was able
Right.
to come back to us, in a lot of ways. There's always that small part that's like, it's gone, you know?
Yeah.
There's the grief of also knowing that your parent will never be the same again,
Yeah.
that they've also lost a part of themselves of, like, who they would have been and could have been, and that's very saddening to even know, like, what person and what kind of mom my mom could have grown into without
Yeah.
this, but in a lot of the ways, she grew into a different parent
Yeah.
that I might not have had without this loss. But anyways, going back to, if you aren't able to provide that, find the people who can for your
Yeah.
child, and the right people,
That
not
part.
just some random aunt or uncle or whatever. Find the right people. Talking about
Even if
therapy,
it's a friend, don't have
even
to
if
be
it's a
family.
friend, doesn't have to be family. Just find the right people, the safe people,
Hmm.
and have those conversations. Even of, as scary as I think that might have been, it was scary, like, to have my mom be like, "I can't handle this right now." It was probably scarier to not know that she
Yeah.
couldn't handle it right
Yeah.
then. Like, to know, to have the conversation even of, I I am too lost in this right now, but I'm gonna make sure you're okay in some way.
Right.
I think that would have offered a lot more stability.
Hmm.
So granted, it took us a long time to get to the point to be like, "Hey, guess what? Therapy is a good thing. It's not just a white people thing. It's
Right.
not just an American thing. It's not
No.
just these American people
It
do that
took a
kind of
long time
stuff."
for me to get to that point of being okay with therapy
Yeah,
or having my mindset change around therapy. I mean, I go to
yes.
therapy now, but um, shout out to Kyle. So
Shout
I
out to
go to,
Brittany.
what I'm saying, Brittany and Kyle. As much as I can, I will always shout out my therapist because when I
Yeah,
say he be putting in work, I mean, I love it. I
yeah,
see the value in it. It literally needs to be a line item in the budget for the rest of my life.
absolutely. And I think when it comes to grief with children, maybe some people look at it differently, but I think how much more beneficial it could have been for me to have that outlet, even if I didn't think I needed it at that time, to
Mhm.
lay the groundwork,
Mhm.
um, to and it's so important to find the right person. Like, you can fire your therapist and keep
Yeah.
firing them until you find the right person. But I feel like if that was a afforded to me at that time, I wonder how differently my grief could have been addressed. Um, but it wasn't even really a thing. I remember my mom became a part of some support groups. I think she saw it. I didn't even know this till a lot later. She did see a therapist, and I think, you know, had her own kind of mental health help in some small degree. But again, that wasn't even really talked about until
Yeah, not
later.
20
And
years
it was
ago.
more of a like, no. And it was more of a like, this is what I had to do to survive in that time, kind of like secretive thing, as opposed to, I mean, I shout from the rooftops, man. I'm like, "Ooh, sorry, something just fell." I am heavily medicated and happy. Like,
Hey.
this is how I get up every day. I pop all those little pills and I am able to function. I have no problem with it. I will happily tell people about it. I My psychiatrist knows, it's great. The people at the pharmacy know me. I'm like, I'm here to get my happy pills. Like, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with therapy. But I think because it wasn't such a big thing, or it wasn't something we talked about, especially I think in the Black community, that's something that I think a lot of people understand at this point, that we're trying to break down that weird generational ideology. That it took again, shout out to Brittany, that I started to really deal with a lot of this grief just within the last couple of years of
Mm.
my life in a deep way. Because before this, there were so many other things. Like, I started going to therapy in college, because a lot of that undealt with grief started to manifest itself in a lot of ways that I didn't even realize it was because of the grief.
Yeah.
It just was depression that I was like, maybe it's because I'm away from home or whatever. So I started therapy then, and so many other different things popped up to where it was like maybe they would have happened anyway, but at the foundation of it, it was because of this undiscussed. I don't like saying even undealt with because you don't really deal with grief. It's not something you just
Right.
like. I worked it through, and now I'm done.
Right.
Um, but this unaddressed, that's a better word for it. This unaddressed grief that kind of was just this low lying frequency throughout
Mhm.
my life that just wasn't ever addressed. That just was kind of the kindling to any other thing that flared up. Um, and it wasn't until I fully addressed it as an adult that I feel like I've been able to really understand how much it shaped, um, it shaped me into who I am right now and to the person I could have been. And I don't really dwell on so much a lot of the coulda, wouldas,
Mhm.
because it is what it is. I say that a lot. It can sound very dismissive, but in a lot of ways, it's just really
It
like
really is what it
it
is.
really is what it is. And so it's like, so what are you gonna do now?
Right.
And what I'm gonna do now is go to therapy and take my medication. And so
Do
again,
what you got to
I
do.
can't express it enough that it's so important to reach out to the people who do have the experience. If you're a parent who has lost a child, if you're a parent whose child has lost a sibling, however, we aren't equipped for those things. But
Right.
there are people who are. Find the people who are and get the help from the people who know how to help.
Yeah.
It's such a easy solution and to a problem we create for ourselves to just not get the help. Um,
Yeah.
it's there, and granted, again, it's a privilege to be able to afford um, therapy, but there are great organizations and different things out there that you know allow, especially for uh, BIPOC people that have scholarships for therapies and for different things. For a long time, we were using. I have to look it up, but we were using this organization that literally is funded by people donating. That it's therapy for Black girls,
Mhm.
um, where we were able to utilize that. Um, and it's so there are ways, or if you're someone who has the privilege of having the ability to afford it for somebody else, pay for somebody else to go to therapy.
Yeah,
Just
for sure.
Zelle, Venmo, PayPal, I don't know, whatever. Throw someone some money to be like, here, let me help you. We gift things all the time. Why
All
not
the time.
gift something like that when it's needed? So anyways, I can't speak more highly of how, not just how much it's helped me, but how much I think it's necessary, not just for grief, but for so many things. But
Yeah.
specifically for grief, it's not something that we should try to figure out and do on our own. It just isn't. It really just isn't. There are people who are so much better equipped that can really
Mhm.
help us to mitigate a lot of the heartache that doesn't have to come with grief
Yeah.
if we're able to deal with it in a appropriate way.
Did you ever feel going back to being the child of a grieving parent, did you ever feel like there was role reversal or like in the sense of like, you know, you are almost like the mom now trying to take care for your mom, or did you ever feel like this pressure to be okay because like with my mom, after my brother passed, like I felt like she would ask, like there was points where down the line where she would ask me if I was okay or how I'm doing. She'd be like, "Are you okay?" And although I wasn't okay, I was drowning,
Mhm.
and trying to figure out my own grief. I felt like I felt like I couldn't give it to her because she wasn't in a she was bare like I said, the foundation of the house was cracked. And I felt like if I dumped my grief in there as well, although she was asking for it, it would have
Mhm.
completely fallen off, fallen apart. And so I felt like there were times I just said I'm okay because I knew that she couldn't she didn't have space to hold my grief as well.
No, I think that is entirely it. I think there was a lot of time, and probably even some now, where interactions are definitely controlled in a different way,
Mhm.
um, to not kind of not wanting to rock the boat,
Yeah.
not wanting to give any more just fear, heartache, stress, worry than need be. Um, I definitely feel like not so much that the roles were reversed and I had to be like the mother entirely. I mean, we talked about the fact of feeling like you needed to kind of pull it in a lot tighter. I
Yeah.
think there was a lot more of just because we were dealing with our grief and individually in some ways, and like I said, kind of privately in some ways, that it was more of a pulling away from each other,
Mhm.
um, and more of a uh, I have to take care of myself in a sense. Like I need to. How can I explain it? Let me think of. Um, let me think. Yeah, I think I more so was just like, let's keep everything real chill.
Yeah.
Not so much that I was like, I need to take care of you, but it was like, we need to not have anything go wrong. Like,
Right.
everything needs to be real calm and real, you know, let's not rock the boat in any way. So, again, that's unnecessary pressure
Yeah.
um, that, you know, no one asked me to do or no, was not like expected of me, but that was how I felt like I was able to protect her. Was to be like, "All right, everything needs to be okay. Like, I need to show her that I'm okay. I need
Mhm.
to, you know, make make sure that the whole way I'm presented is that everything is fine."
Yeah, I went through
Um,
the same thing. I felt like I needed to. I mean, granted, like I said, we live in two different states, but I felt like whenever we would speak, I needed to just show her that I was moving forward or progressing forward,
yes.
that I wasn't letting this situation um, bring me down because I felt like my progression of doing well, quote unquote, um, helped heal her in some way. Like it
Mm,
helped bring her up in some way. Cause if she realized, oh, you
yes.
know what, my other kids are also drowning, it just would have kept her down in that
Yes.
space. But I think pr- in times portraying that I was a lot better than I was in that time, I did because I knew it would bring her up in some way, um, in a positive way to help her deal with her grief. And so I wouldn't say necessarily role reversal for me either, but just not really a role reversal in the sense of like I just, as us as parents, like we won't tell our kids all of our hard
Absolutely. Yeah.
griefs and stories and things like, if you are struggling with putting food on the table and you're like, you know what? I'm going to give my kids the biggest heap of spaghetti I can,
Yeah.
and me and daddy are going to take the smallest portions. I'm not going to
Yeah.
sit here and if my kid, even though I'm still hungry, my kid's like, Mommy, are you full? I'm be like, I am so full. I'm not going to give them all of that. You know what I mean? Like, actually,
Exactly.
no, mommy's hungry and we don't have
Yeah.
enough food, So I felt like I took that role reversal with my mom
Mhm.
of just being like, you know what? Let me give her the positive because I know that's gonna help her in this moment.
It's like offering a layer of protection.
Yeah.
And what you said is so powerful. It's very true. I think the idea of I don't know if like just like if I literally thought this or if it was just like innately in me of I like she again no one it's so funny how much we put on ourselves
Mhm.
when no one puts it on us where we just take this on, but the idea of she's entitled to so much more of the grief than
Mhm.
I am
Mhm.
because like that was her child, this was just my brother,
Mhm.
which that's not true, that's not
That's
how it
not
should have
true
been.
or
There's
fair
no
either. Right.
no there's no layers to like who gets to have
The
more
most
of the grief
grief.
or not. But I
Mhm.
think that was a part of it, and hearing you say that made me think. I think that was a part of it of feeling like she is allotted so much more of the grief, so I can't add to it.
Right,
I can't add to it. Like it's like her cup is already too full. And if I
right.
add to it, it's going to overflow, and who knows what's going to happen. And there's
Like, when
probably
that
part of it's
dam
because
breaks, right. We
it's
scared of the
probably
dam
it's because there's
breaking.
a part of it that because we saw how bad it got,
Right,
how bad they can get to where it's like, I can't be the thing that breaks the dam, that pushes
right.
them over the edge. I
Yeah.
can't. And you feel like that is so possible for that to happen because you see how far gone they can get
Mhm.
to where, so yeah, I agree. I think if there was anything, it was more of a, she has so much more of the grief that she's trying to navigate through that I can't add to that. So I
Yeah,
have to be okay. Or I have
right.
to deal with my own stuff on my own
On
with
my
other
own.
people. Um, and I can't share that with her. Where I
Mhm.
think even as now being a parent, I would be like, even if I can't handle it, quote unquote, I still want to know if my child is hurting, you
Yeah,
know? So understanding that now on the other end of that's not what she was asking of me.
right.
But again, we didn't know how to navigate it because we didn't have the tools and we didn't reach out for the tools. We didn't know how to reach out for the tools
Yeah,
um, to understand all of that. So again, PSA to anyone, find the help. You
for
don't have
sure.
to have all of these unnecessary pressures on yourself. Find the help.
Mhm. So, you know how, like, I think especially in the Black and brown communities, faith and spirituality can be, um,
Mhm.
you know, both a comfort and a complication. I feel like when we're grieving, you get the be strong or have faith
Yeah.
and things like that. And I know I've had my own journey with spirituality from being agnostic to going to Christianity to now trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing, honestly.
Yeah.
When it comes to my own walk with God, um, during the times of loss, faith can either be like a raft for some people that's kind of keeping them afloat from going under, um, or sometimes faith can feel super hollow, after a loss. How do you feel like your spiritual journey has intersected with your grief in either a positive or negative way?
Yeah. I'm laughing because you know what I'm going to say. Um, it at a time where you would think it would have been a great comfort, the the belief systems I held to at that time were so harmful,
Mm,
very much so harmful. Um, because the belief systems that I held at that time were very narrow. So this whole idea of salvation and what does this mean for people? It wasn't as free as it could kind of be more so in the especially in, the Black community or where it comes to religion, where it's kind of like, you know, it's just a constant. It's almost like you're born into it. You're like
mhm,
a generational Christian. Um, that wasn't where I was at the time, so it was very narrowly focused onto what salvation looked like for different people. And it was very harmful. It just was. That's probably the best way to describe it. It was very much so a place where it's like if you didn't hold to this ideology, you didn't have that same hope of, what was described as heaven.
mhm,
Um, so I spent so many years feeling like there that hope was lost for any connection later on in in the afterlife or whatever. And
mhm,
I'm speaking kind of vaguely about it because that is such a bigger conversation about just the religious aspects of things and how I approached religion and the kind of organization and stuff that I was in at that time. But that's the best way I could describe it is that it was very harmful if because he wasn't living the specific lifestyle that was laid out for me that was told was the right way to do it,
Mhm.
it meant that he he wasn't saved, you know, or what have
Girl,
you.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it. So for you and your brother, it was like, oh, he wasn't baptized, so he gonna be in hell. He has no hope
Exactly.
of heaven. For me and my brother, it was, oh, he took his whole life, so he in hell. So
All right. So
we're not.
let's just put that out there. You're
Let's
right.
just put it out there because we
That's what we were
experienced the
dealing with.
same thing. We have
Exactly.
people literally coming up and telling us, asking
Yeah.
me how I felt about my brother going to hell, and I'm like, I mean, my gosh, honestly, in these types of conversations, if my husband wasn't there, I'd be in jail because I done fought somebody. Like, how you
Yeah.
walk up to somebody and say that? Like, how do you have the
Exactly.
audacity, right, to say something like that to someone? Or, we had a hard time finding someone to do his funeral because they were like, but he going to hell. So like, why would I? There's no hope of heaven. What are we talking
Yeah.
about here? So yeah,
Yeah.
I feel you.
And let's just be very real and frank that that is abusive
Yeah.
and harmful and
And why in that
psychotic.
moment, like why in that
Yeah.
moment when we are in our lowest points, my mom, your mom, you, me, our siblings
Yeah.
in our lowest points, that you feel like that's the one thing that you need to make sure we understand
Yeah.
is that he was not saved, he will not be in heaven. He took his own life, he will not be in heaven. Like, why is that the
Yeah.
message that you feel so compelled to share in this moment?
Exactly. So yeah,
It's
so
crazy.
put that into the perspective of being 16, feeling that, hearing that, and thinking that that was also the way you were supposed to think,
Right.
and being like,
Right. Like
how
you
does
you
that
need to
help
you need to
process
agree with
grief?
us.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, so needless to say, that informed a lot of those first years, and it was traumatic is not even the word to
Mhm.
describe. And that informed a lot of my decisions in later of my life when it comes to spirituality. Right now, I would probably consider myself agnostic of,
Mhm.
but leaning way more towards the idea of, um, I believe in like just the world around us. I think that when I'm not here anymore, either there's nothing or I go back into the air we breathe, you know,
Right.
like Carl Sagan, we're just a speck of dust. Um,
Mhm.
we're stardust, and I love that. I'm looking at a poster I have or a print art piece I have in my room. That's the whole Carl Sagan. You know, we're just stardust. That whole part of his book because I genuinely believe that. Um, and that would have been helpful to have heard at a time like that instead of such a negative, harmful ideology.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't feel like that played a major. I don't feel like that was obviously that wasn't very helpful, and I don't feel like that allowed me to actually properly grieve. Because, like you're
Yeah.
saying, why at that time? You know,
Right.
why just don't say anything?
Right.
Like if you, like there's I kind of vacillate or kind of waver between the two ideas of um like either like I also didn't want to hear the well there's a reason for everything. Like there's a
Oh
because I'm like what's
gosh.
the reason for this? There
Thank
is no
you.
reason for
I
this.
hate it when
There's
people said that to me. Please
I'm like
stop.
no no okay then you tell me what's the reason?
What
There's not a
was it?
reason for
Have you
this.
seen that Cardi B thing? What was the reason?
Yes. What was the reason? I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
you're not gonna ever convince me that there's a reason or this had to" so I'm like, "This, the worst possible thing had to happen for this other thing to happen? You could keep that other thing. I don't want it." Like, no, I
Yeah.
didn't need those empty platitudes, and I definitely didn't need this weird religious condemnation,
Yeah.
um, that is beyond the scope of just cruel, you know,
Yeah.
quite frankly. So,
Yeah.
honestly, the thing that should have probably people think about that should have brought a lot more peace, did the exact opposite for me. I can't speak for, my brother or my mother at the time. I think she held to some form of, you know, faith and still does, and I'm actually really glad for that for her, that her where she is at, she has this, what she believes will happen when she is no longer here is that they will be reunited in some way. And even if that's not my belief system, I am so grateful that she has that
Yeah,
as like this olive branch for her to offer her that peace. Like I genuinely mean that. I'm like, I'm so happy that she has that and she believes that. And it doesn't matter if I believe it or not,
right.
because that's what is reality to her. And I want that for her, you know.
I feel
So
the
what has
same
brought
way.
me,
You
sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Oh no, I was
I
saying
was
I
gonna say
feel the
what
same way. I feel the same way about my mom. Like I said, her faith is super strong. And I feel like if she didn't have that, she would have sank on that raft for sure.
absolutely.
But I think for me, I was already in some tailspin of where I'm at spiritually. When my brother died, that I wasn't, it didn't, spiritual things didn't bring me comfort.
Yeah.
And uh and I think it was just more, it added to the confusion. Like it just added to all
The
the
noise.
dust and the noise that I had in my head at the time. But I also feel like you said, like if my mom didn't have that, like
Yeah.
that would have been very, very traumatic. I think that
Yeah.
would have broke the dam for
Mhm.
her. But I'm also like, because I don't necessarily know what I feel about where I'm at with my own spiritual walk, I don't knock my mom for hers or anybody else's for
Absolutely.
that matter.
Yeah.
Um, I
I'm like,
feel
listen,
like
if what you believe doesn't cause harm to other people, I don't care.
you know what I'm saying?
You
Look,
believe what you want to believe, whatever brings you joy, because I'm doing the same thing.
right,
It's when it causes harm where I'm like, no,
that part.
let's not. And like you said, I like I cannot express how much it gives me peace to know my mom has that peace.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm like, that's what she needs. And
Yep.
it's not like in a condescending, like, well, she believes that, so good for her. Like, no, I genuinely am like, I am so glad she has that lifeline for
Mhm.
her. It brings me peace because it helps, it takes some of that off of me,
Yeah, for
of
sure.
feeling like how can I help? I'm like, I'm glad she has that. It brings me a lot of, yeah, just a lot of peace.
Yeah, it
Yeah, I
takes a
mean, I
lot of pressure
remember,
off.
yeah, it's a lot of pressure. I remember a different kind of grief, but I've had multiple miscarriages, but I remember after one of them talking about what people say, and I laugh now because at the moment, I think I also laughed because it was exactly what I needed to hear. People were again doing the everything happens for a reason or
Mhm.
blah blah blah. And I had this one coworker at the time who was just I told her what happened. She literally just said, "That sucks." And I was like, "Yes."
The best thing ever.
I literally was like, "This is the best thing anyone has said to me during this
Yep.
whole thing." Not even like, "I'm so sad for you," or like,
Right.
"Oh," she was just like, "That sucks." And I was like, I felt like elation. 'Cause I was like, "Yes, it does. Thank you. That's all I needed someone to
Right.
say." Was like, "Yeah,
Right.
this sucks." And it's kind of like that's what I offer people now, or I ask what they need to offer. Now, I mean, I think I even after your brother, I reached out to you or to anyone when I hear a sibling thing where I'm just like, I'm here because it's such a small pocket.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
here. I understand. This sucks.
It's an
You know,
exclusive group that I wish no one to be a part of. And it's
exactly. I
same
call it
and
the
it's
worst club to have membership
I'm
with.
telling you,
Like, I
for
don't want to be
sure.
a part of this club,
Right.
but because I am, I want to offer any of what someone needs in those moments because it's hard to find that kind of specific type of support. But it sucks,
Yeah.
plain and simple. It just does.
You know how they say, I think you kind of touched on it earlier when they say like the grief is the price you pay for love.
Yeah.
But I also think grief can be a teacher if we're willing to listen. What
Yeah.
do you what has your grief taught you that you feel like you might not have learned otherwise?
Well, I think going back to the spirituality aspect of it, I think being able to disconnect from a lot of the more harmful belief systems that I held for a long time has given me a lot more freedom to find what brings me joy in thinking about how I can approach grief,
Mhm.
and how I could approach the idea of, you know, anticipatory grief of like imagining losing my mother one day and stuff of thinking about because I went through that, I know what I don't want it to look like.
Yeah.
You know, I know how it's changed my outlook on how I will approach those things, the kind of help I will seek out. I think it's given me a lot of I have to balance this really well of how I navigate my own children's relationships to each other because I'm like, you guys have an opportunity that I didn't get to have. So I'm like,
Mhm.
be nice.
Right.
Be nice to each other. You don't know how lucky you are. But I'm like,
Right.
okay, don't parent from fear, out from a
That
place of
part.
fear. Um, I think also just being able to have the again, I don't believe it's like this happened for a reason. I think it is what it is. And what it is that now I can commiserate with other people who experience this kind of loss. I think it's also taught me that it's so important when people are going through loss to just let them be.
Yeah.
Let them approach it how they need to. How I did doesn't have to be how they did it. How it looks, it doesn't have anything to do with me. People don't need to grieve in a way that makes me comfortable.
Mhm.
They need to grieve in a way, unless again it's becoming harmful to their physical or mental
Right.
well-being.
Right.
Um, Outside of that, it's like I don't have a role in it
Right.
unless they want me to. Other than that, just let people grieve how they need to. I think a lot of times we like to pretty up things because we are uncomfortable
Yeah.
with whatever litany of different things. I think we can get very uncomfortable with how that affects us personally, that
Mhm.
we try to put that kind of pressure on other people to be like, okay, hurry this up because I'm uncomfortable.
Right. Exactly.
Where it's like, just no, it has nothing to do with you. It's that person's experience. And let them, again, outside of it being actually harmful, then that doesn't matter. If it's harmful, then you need to do what you need to do. You need to step in. But outside of that, it has nothing to do with you. Let people grieve in the way they need to. And
Yeah.
however long that takes, however that looks like. Um, but yeah, I think it's affected how I deal with what my therapist and I have realized is anticipatory grief. And there is such a
Mm.
thing as pre-grieving.
Yeah, girl.
Pre-grieving, which I was a whole new concept to me, but pre-grieving, even now as my mother has gotten older, pre and there's different health issues and of
Same, friend.
pre-grieving some
Same.
things. Yeah. Where I'm like, this is such a new concept to me to where it's like, is this okay? And she's like,
Mhm.
absolutely is. And I'm like, I feel very grateful because I feel like there's a large part of me that is already grieved a lot of things that where when that time has come, there will obviously still be grief, but
Right.
there will be a lot that I've already worked through.
Which is funny because I feel like same way, right? But I also feel
Yeah.
like when that time comes, it'd be like almost like, oh yeah, something wrong with her. We need to go with Tina because she ain't
Oh,
cried, she ain't did nothing, she ain't
100%.
grieved. She is
Yes.
not
I thought
grieving.
about that too. I thought about too. People are gonna be like, she's a little too zen. Oh my god.
Right. I ain't seen her cry yet. Like,
Yeah. And then I'll be like, go to therapy. And you too can not have to feel like you're adrift at sea.
yep.
Because I think again, going back to that, like what has it taught me? It's taught me that you can it doesn't mean that you're not going to feel all those things, but it doesn't mean you have to be lost in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to literally get to the depths of it because you can figure out, even if it's just strategies to how does my body deal with these type of things, like literally physically, how does my body, how do I approach and have conversations with my own children,
Mhm.
or and be able to think through some of those things in a healthy way is so beneficial.
Yeah.
And it's just I'm literally I in one of my last therapy sessions talking about it, I was just like, I'm so grateful you've talked to me about this because I feel like I've already have been able to think about things in a way that will help me later to
For
avoid a
sure.
lot of that deep, like soul shattering kind of grief. And I just wish that for so many other people. I'm like, this is the way we're supposed to. And I think a lot of other cultures, religions, societies deal with things very differently and do actually hold to a lot of those things and approach it differently in a way that is a lot healthier than we probably do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I'm grateful for that of learning what I don't want it to look like so that I can have it feels weird to say, but the truth is like a better experience with grief
Yeah.
as it turns up in different ways because it will. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, it literally it's life. From the moment we're here, we know we won't be here one day.
Yep.
So,
Um, there's this quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it was something that I felt like I just kind of stuck on in a sticky note on my wall, and it says, "Grief, I've learned, is really just love. It's all the love that you want to give but cannot." And I believe that part of healing is finding ways to carry their essence forward, and then um, because I think a lot of times when people think about grief, they think, well, it's almost like I have to forget or I have to leave it behind and that's how I'm healed, quote unquote. But I think a part of that for me is just figuring out how to move forward and move their essence forward. And
yeah.
how do you honor your brother's memory in your life today?
I think it really um it's a very interesting way. I and again, different people, will view this in different ways. Um my youngest child, we've always called him very open to whatever is there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he considers himself very open to whatever is there. So it's not something I'm putting on him. He's literally was the little kid people talk about that was like able to describe what it was like when he was in my womb, like
Oh wow.
from a very young age. He was like, "Oh yeah, I heard your voice and it was really warm." And I felt really, I'm like, this is weird. But okay. Like when he had words without prompting, would say those kind of things. He's had dreams. Like he had a dream about my grandmother visiting him the day she died before I even knew.
Oh
He
wow.
was like, "Oh, yeah, I had a dream about grandma or great grandma." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, she died. You didn't know that." Um, so different things. So, anyways, what I think it all kind of started with is when he was born, like I was saying before. Like the resemblance is almost uncanny. It's weird. I don't necessarily I'm like, oh, it's a reincarnation thing. No, but again,
Mm-hmm.
the whole um like we are always with each other kind of DNA. There's a
Yeah.
small part of me that I think in having him and even seeing how him and my mother have related. Like
Mm-hmm.
she loves all of her grandkids. Like she will do whatever for all of them.
For them
She is that
babies.
grandma. Yes. She is that grandma. Um, but I do think that there was something I think even from that beginning that brought her some kind of healing in a way that I
Mm,
can't even really describe to where I'm just like I feel like there is some kind of interesting connection. I don't know
yeah.
how to describe it. It is what it is. Again, my motto. To where I feel like there's a lot of him. We call each other each are like our twin flames, although that has like a weird connotation now. So I don't know how people use it, but of like him and I are very connected. Um, and there's a small part of it that's also how me and my brother and I didn't even realize that until I was talking to my therapist again about some different things, and she was like, "Do you know that when you talk about your son, it's the exact same way you talk about your brother,
Mm,
your relationship?" And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "The way you talk about them is so much the same." And not saying that I'm like, don't treat him like my child. That's my kid.
Right.
Like,
I
I
can
am your mom. I'm
attest.
not your friend, but I'm also your friend.
Right.
Like, yeah, you've seen us together.
Yeah.
Of, um, I don't know how to describe it, but in some ways, I feel like I'm able to heal small parts of me because I feel like I don't know, maybe there's a sprinkling more of extra DNA in him.
Mhm.
Um, and where it just brings me joy. And I think also just that kind of now being a mother of someone who is uh, biologically a male, but also identifies as a male, it
Mhm.
changes the perspective on how I could see my mom's relationship with him. So in some ways where you think that would probably make me more anxious because I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, another little brown boy out in the world, it has brought me some interesting form, not of closure, but of peace is the best
Mm.
way to describe it. And maybe that's just it. Maybe there's an extra little sprinkling of his DNA in him. Um,
Right.
but he's always been kind of, and that we don't put, he doesn't feel any of this pressure on him. It's like you were saying about the whole spaghetti and whatever. We're just like, hey, by the way,
Right.
behind the scenes, we're like, hey, by the way. Um, but for whatever reason, since he was born, he's brought a lot of comfort to my mom, to my brother, in a very way that I don't think any of us kind of anticipated. Like,
Mm.
whereas my daughter is like the apple of their eye, the
Mhm.
granddaughter that's like perfect in every way.
Right.
Like there's just different dynamics, like, and he is too. But I think, he kind of offered something that we didn't expect. Um, but outside of that, I think that again, that might sound crazy to other people. I don't need to explain it. I don't even understand it. It is again, what is it? It is what it is. Um,
Right.
but I think also just in a way, like I talk to my kids about him,
Mm.
or it would have been like, oh man, if he was here, he would have loved this, or you would have loved this about him.
Mhm.
Um, when I feel like it's appropriate and stuff, because to them, there's literally no connection,
Yeah.
he's just a thought to them. But I feel like in some ways that has helped for him to be more tangible than just a thought.
Yeah.
And that brings me joy, for them to even know that he's in my thoughts in that way.
Mm. For me, I feel like in kind of keeping Dion's memory, his essence moving forward with me, I feel like so Dion loved to travel and like do all these
Mm,
things. So I've been doing a lot more of that, going to concerts and stuff like that. Like last year, I was in the
yeah.
streets. Like I was just in the streets last year doing all the things. Um, and I think also um, I think also like creating this podcast has been a part of
Yeah.
my healing journey. Just creating a space for the authentic conversations like I used to have with my brother um like I don't know, it's like we didn't talk every day,
Hmm.
but when we did talk, it was meaty,
Yeah.
and we got I don't know, we just got down to it. And would have those philosophical, like, what do you think about, I don't know. We just had all these types of that. We laughed, like it was just we ran the
Yeah.
gambit, we ran the gambit when we talked. And I think about this podcast, I kind of feel like when I think
Hmm.
about the episodes that I've done, it's kind of been like that. You laugh, you might cry, you get serious, you get,
Yeah.
and it just kind of reminds me of him. Um and
I love that.
yeah, so I'm I know this is I feel proud of myself because, I mean, I think people that know me, like, I could be a hermit crab, like, I can be in my house, and it's crazy. Like, I'm an introvert, but and I and I people who know me, who truly know me, know that I am, but it's crazy because I feel like people are drawn to me, and I'm like, "Why?" Like, "Get away from me," a lot of times. And I think people think I'm an extrovert because honestly, who I'm with will bring those tendencies out of me.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like I feel like when I think about Dion, like this is something I feel like he would have been good at. Like just having
Yeah.
those conversations with people, talking to people. And I think about the way that he and our conversations went. And I'm like, I want to do that with other people. I want to do that and have people feel
Yeah.
the way I felt talking to him. So yeah,
I
I
love that. And I think, obviously, I think, um, well, as your friend, I think clearly I was drawn to you, and I think people are drawn to you because you love very deeply when you
I
love people.
do.
So just to put that out there, so you
If
know
you can
why.
make if you can make it past the barrier,
So
and
you can know
you get to the
why
other.
people do love you.
I know. You make it past
Well,
that
I mean,
barrier
I
and get to
think,
the other side. You feel
then,
all the things.
then you feel very privileged. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I love that. I think that I think it also leaves room to be like, just like it's been almost 20 years for me. I think that will continue to change, as we get older. I think
Hmm.
my answer now obviously is very different than it would have been longer ago. And in another couple of years, it might be different when I have grandkids, or
Hmm.
I'm very open to that fluidity of just wherever this whole experience will take me. Um, I think that's probably the best way I can approach things now is just of trusting that the wherever I'm supposed to go, however it's supposed to look, will be made obvious to me in that time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think as long as I have a therapist to help me work through those things, I don't feel very worried about them because
Yeah,
I
for
know
sure.
help is there. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that it's again the worst club to be a part of. But there's so much joy that I get from knowing that there's people like I know if something came up that would be really hard, I would go to you and the few other people I know who have experienced sibling loss that would just
Yeah.
get it,
Yeah.
that would just understand it without having to explain the whole backstory of everything.
Right. 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 Right.
So there's a lot of comfort in that too,
There's comfort
knowing
in
that,
that too, not having to explain.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so finding that community, quote unquote, I think is really helpful too because it eliminates a lot of that like work up to the point that you're trying to get to where it's just like, again, sometimes the best thing is this sucks.
Hmm. Hmm.
And knowing someone else can understand that on a very deep level is really comforting, in a lot of ways. Um, so I'm grateful for it, even though I wish none of us would have to have that.
Yeah.
I am grateful for it.
So before we wrap up, what's one thing or one truth about grief that you wish more people understood?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. Um, I don't think it's a profoundly new thought, but I really do think that truly understanding that it's like a river and it flows
Mm,
and you can't confine it to make it look any specific way. Um, that we could always relate in some ways, but that it's going to look very different
yeah.
for different people. But also that it is so important to meet people where they're at, to not say
Mm,
the things that you think you're supposed to say that make you feel comfortable.
mhm.
Um, it's better to not say anything at all. If you don't know what to say, truly,
Child.
it's totally okay to not say anything, or even
Right.
just say, "I don't have anything I can say." Like, but I am here. I will be here at if you need me, if you don't want me, um,
Right.
to just be there. And this is funny, we hadn't ever really talked about this, but again, it's probably one of those things that between us is just known is don't just be there for the person in those first few days or weeks.
Mhm.
Be with them in 3 years,
Right.
not just on that holiday or the birthday or the anniversary of their death. Um, just understand that grief again, it's like a river and it flows. It will always flow through our lives. So just to understand that, you know, at some point they might be having a hard time and it's years later and not to be like,
I'm
wait, what?
telling you.
Where'd this come from?
Right.
Because it's an undercurrent that's always with us. And I think just realizing that you can be totally fine, but it doesn't mean that that undercurrent isn't still there, you know. But I think
Mm,
it's a again probably the best thing I could say that I learned, and it's not. I don't feel like for me personally, it's not like some weird platitude, but I have gotten a lot of peace out of how beautiful is it that I had that much love for someone, that it
mm.
causes this kind of reaction on the other side of
Yeah.
it. And I much rather have that be the reaction to it than nothing at all, you know?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh my gosh. So I think for me, I think what I wish more people understood is that um I feel like it's talked about but not necessarily understood is that it's not grief isn't just something to get over, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But like
There is no
it
over.
be there is no over, right? Like it's like you said, it's a river. It's gonna continue to flow.
Yeah.
Um, but that is something that becomes a part of the ground or the soil that you grow from.
Mhm.
Like, and that you're gonna grow differently because of it. And so
Mhm.
if it's almost like, in a garden, like you're blooming these beautiful purple flowers, and then grief happens or this cold front comes in, all your stuff dies, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you emerge again, but now you're blooming orange flowers. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's what it is, and you might not ever get back to that person, but it's also that's not the goal. The goal isn't to get me
Yeah.
back to who I was or back to who I
No.
used to be. It's navigating forward, you
Yeah.
know, into this new space of, growth.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very well put.
So,
I totally agree. Yeah.
yeah.
Again, I guess that goes back to it. You just got to let it happen,
Yeah.
and it will be different for everyone, but very much so true. It's not something that ever is like, all right, all done.
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
um, and it does inform us in every way. Um, but it's good to have the community. I'm glad that we have the ability to speak with each other on such a unfortunate commonality. Um, but yeah, I guess if there was one last thing I would say is find that community as
Yeah.
well. If I haven't said that already, to
Well,
find that
yeah. I was
community
going to
as well.
ask you that what kind of what wisdom would you impart on our listeners who may be going through something similar, experiencing the loss of a sibling, and or just being the child of a grieving parent, what would be some wisdoms that you would drop on them?
Well, I think as well-meaning as people are, you know you and your family and your situation best. So again, it's in finding the right people that work for you and
Mhm.
dealing with things in the way that works for you, not for other people. We're not very well equipped in the society to know how to deal with grief in a lot of ways. And the way somebody might say that this needs to look like might not be what works for you. So,
Yeah.
and along with finding that community is, if it at all possible, to come together with the other people in your family who are experiencing this loss, this acute loss together to try to figure out how to navigate it. And again, that's super hard because, again, these things, even when they're expected, it's still unexpected. It's still a one time they're here, one moment they're here, one moment they're not kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um, and I think it's really good to realize that you are okay to do what you need to do for your family. So again, I had mentioned that I couldn't remember the name of it before, but it's the Loveland, Loveland, the therapy um, group that I was talking about that
Oh
has
yeah.
a therapy fund. It's the Loveland Foundation, but on Instagram it's called the Loveland Group LLC. Um, I think that's a great place to start. If
Yeah.
you're uh, Black, queer, indigenous, brown person that's in need for therapy, they have a therapy fund you can apply to um, that can help pay for a set amount of therapy to get you started.
Mhm.
I think that's a great resource. I think to sum it up, if I had to be, it's like find the community, find the helper, meaning a therapist, not just the, random person who wants to be like, let me share some of my insight that has no
Mhm.
experience with this. Um, and, surround yourself with the things and the people that you need in that moment.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Tina. This has been a very
Yay.
full, transforming episode. And I think even for me, just talking a little bit more openly about my brother and like share him with the world, honestly, of how
Yeah.
great he was as a person and um being able to like, like we said, what we talked about, just moving him forward, as we
Yeah.
move forward in life. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's this episodes like this, conversations like this is like I'm like, this is why I created this space. This is why
I
like
love
this
it.
is what I hoped for, to have talks like this that heal us.
Yeah.
Um, so for anybody that wants to follow you or connect with you, do you have any ways that you want to share for people to do that?
I like I mentioned kind of in passing, I am a doula. I mainly look to serve the BIPOC community.
And say what
And
BIPOC is because some people
yes,
might not understand what
sorry.
that means. I meant to say that earlier when you said
Got
BIPOC, and
it.
I was like, people might not understand what that means.
Black indigenous. Yeah, that's true. I shouldn't assume. Black indigenous people of color. But it kind of is like non-white community. Um, the underserved in a lot of ways. Obviously, the Black maternal mortality rate is the highest amongst all the mortality rates in the US. Black women are more likely to not leave the hospital
Hmm.
than to leave the hospital after giving birth.
Yep.
Um, so that is my main clientele. And I I have probably the best place would be on my Instagram. It's hasn't been updated in a while because of life, but I am still here to offer services, and I do offer on a sliding scale for different, especially anyone who might be unhoused or in situations where they couldn't afford a doula. I feel like it's important life-giving care
Yeah.
because of that maternal mortality rate, and being able to live shouldn't be a privilege. So having a doula can
So true.
mitigate some of those factors. You can find me at YBYW Doula, Your Birth Your Way Doula, but shortened to YBYW Doula on Instagram.
Hmm.
And that's it across all social platforms. But other than that, you can leave me alone.
Or if you want to
As
talk to her,
Destiny said, which I loved her sign off. No, I'm comfortable in my little bubble over here. I'm
Mhm.
good.
So if you know anybody that is looking for a doula,
Sorry,
um,
I guess I should have said it in the
and,
Orlando area.
right, I was about to say in the Orlando area.
That's where I am.
Um, yeah, because that's where she is. So if you know anyone in that area, definitely reach out to her on Instagram.
And
Listening
if you
to
are
you.
not a person of color or queer queer in the queer community, and if you're just a cis white woman, I also take all clients, but I will charge you full price so I can take care of my people. Just so you
Yes. Period.
know. So
Unapologetically.
just putting that out there unapologetically.
Yes. And also, just in the spirit of this episode, for those of you who may be in close proximity to those who are struggling with grief, whether it be the loss of a child or the parent of the loss of a child or a spouse or whatever, and you are in a place financially that you can help, sponsor a counseling session or two. I think that is one of the best ways that I feel like you could help someone more than just saying, "Hey, how can I help you? Are you okay?" Sometimes I think just if you're in a place where you can help in that way, definitely sponsor um, some counseling sessions. So, yeah.
And I think one last thing, if at all you're in a life-threatening situation, please feel like you can reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Mhm.
It's 800-273-TALK. And there's also, you could text NAMI, uh, the crisis text line, which is 741-741. Just to put that out there.
Thank
'Cause
you. Thank
grief
you. I appreciate it.
we all need help.
Thanks so much, Tina. So, to our listeners, I just want to remind you guys that new episodes drop every Wednesday. So, hit that notification bell so that you can join us for more conversations like this one.
That's all for today's episode of the Living Room Vibe podcast, where real people have raw conversations. I'm your host, Danny Lourdes. Thanks for vibing with me. If you're feeling the vibe, follow us on Instagram at the LRV podcast, as well as hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. It helps more people find their way to our living room. And as always, thanks for listening. Bye.